Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to see a movie called The Passenger. When film begins, the spacecraft Avalon is shown traveling through space on its way to Homestead 2, a colonized world. The ship is on autopilot and every room is empty. Both the 5,000 passengers and the 258 crew members are hibernating. Abruptly, the ship's defenses are weakened as it travels through an asteroid belt. The ship is headed straight for a massive asteroid, but power is redirected to the primary shield. The asteroid and the ship clash abruptly, leading to a number of malfunctions. One of the sleep pods activates while the ship starts self-reparations. Jim Preston, a mechanical engineer, is the passenger who has been awakened. An automatic device assists him in waking up when his pod opens, informing him that he has been in suspended animation for 120 years and that the spacecraft is just 4 months away from Homestead 2. He is informed that he can take advantage of the ship's opulent features at that period. Before arriving on the planet, Jim is given instructions regarding his ID band, his cabin, and the main activities he is expected to engage in. He gets ready, leaves his cabin, and enters an automated classroom designed for a whole learning group, both anxious and excited to meet the individuals on board. As the hologram describes the state of affairs on Earth, describing it as overpopulated, pricey, and overvalued, Jim appears rather nervous. Jim keeps questioning why he's the only one there, even though the instructor advises him to save his inquiries for the end of the course. He goes looking for other people. After realizing that the hologram is unable to respond to him, he arrives at the ship's main concourse. An automated information desk provides assistance, but no one is present either. When Jim requests to speak with a real person, he is directed to speak with a steward, but when he discovers that no one else is around, he requests to speak with the captain instead. He finds that none of the primary crew is awake when he arrives at the bridge, despite the fact that he is unable to enter. After a while, Jim visits the observatory and discovers that the ship is, in fact, 90 years distant from Homestead 2. Since he doesn't know how to go back into hibernation, he recognizes that he woke up too early and quickly returns to the concourse before sending a message back to Earth wondering what to do. He is told by the communications system that it would take around 55 years to receive a response to the expensive call to Earth. Jim is inconsolable. After wandering around, he comes upon another individual at the ship's bar. Something about him seems off. When he speaks to the bartender, Jim discovers he's an android when he tries to bring him a drink. Arthur is the name of it. Jim wants to ask him more questions, but he is unable to even explain to the android how he could be there before him. The following day, Jim awakens in his accommodation and heads to the cantina, where he soon discovers that the majority of the menu items are exclusive to gold-class travelers. After getting his basic coffee, he attempts to fix his hibernation chamber. He gathers all the necessary equipment, gets it working, and lies down inside the pod. However, nothing occurs. He then makes the decision to enter the crew's hibernation chambers using the items he discovered. That also doesn't work. Minor issues occur throughout the ship. Jim keeps coming back to the bar, largely to chat with Arthur, but also to drink. He is persuaded to break into one of the gold-class rooms and to attempt to enjoy himself on board by the advice the android gives him. Jim checks out every eatery, game, entertainment system. But as time goes on, being there by himself makes him even more miserable. While wandering around the sleep pods one day after drinking too much, he stumbles into an airlock that has spacesuits meant for spacewalks. Jim puts on a suit, walks up to the airlock and presses a lever and a button to open the door. He is captivated by the vista as soon as he steps off the ship. He is the only human being who is aware of that particular point in time. Devastated, Jim lets go of the magnets on his boots and floats in space. Returning inside, he removes the suit but returns to the airlock without it. As he pulls the lever to put an end to it all, he has a last-minute change of heart, dashes back inside and puts on a bottle. Jim gets to his feet and is immediately attracted to Aurora, a woman in one of the pods. After listening to her passenger interview and looking over her files in the directory, he falls in love with her. He was then spotted listening to her interviews while seated next to her pod. He is discussing her writing with Arthur while reading some of her pieces back in the pub. The irony of his circumstances, waking up early and failing to achieve his destination, traveling to another planet in a search of a better life, and discovering his ideal girlfriend only to find her out of reach, becomes his obsession. Jim begins to feel the want to wake her up as well, cause he can't stop thinking about her. He discusses it with the robot, but he is unable to comprehend the dilemma. He would be leaving her there with him to perish on the ship if he woke her up for his own gain. Jim initially chooses not to, but as time passes, he finds it impossible to let go. Until he decides to change his views one day, he approaches her pod and successfully turns it on. He hides and returns to his room when she wakes up, and begins the same process he did. He travels to the main concourse a little while later in the hopes of finding her. And now there she is, as perplexed as he was a year before. Jim brings her to the observatory and assures her that they are the only ones awake. He then informs her that he is unable to reach the ship's primary commands of the crew. In a panic, Aurora wants to return to her pod. When they arrive, Jim clarifies that the ship does not have any specialized equipment that can assist them in returning to hibernation, thereby informing her of their stranding. When they return to the concourse, he advises her to take it easy because she has just emerged from hibernation. Since he must spend over a year by himself on the ship, she feels bad for him. Jim feels bad about what he did and returns to the bar. He requests that Arthur keep the fact that he awakened Aurora up a secret. The following day, Aurora awakens. Returning to the concourse, she queries the automated information desk regarding the hibernation pods. They go for brunch when Jim joins her there. The information desk is malfunctioning as they depart. After noticing that Jim has been eating the same breakfast for over a year, Aurora orders him one of the gold-class menus at the cantina. They discuss the prospect of fixing the pods. Aurora isn't prepared to give up like Jim is. After looking through research materials and the infirmary, she finds herself trying to force open the doors to the crew's hibernation rooms. Jim observes other ship issues. After a while, Aurora regrets her existence aboard the Avalon. As she writes, jogs around the ship, and swims in the pool, she grows increasingly conscious of her predicament. She believes Jim's story would be fascinating, so she goes to the cantina to interview him. Why did he come to the colony, she asks. Jim responds with company slogans at first, then goes on to say that he wishes to become well known and establish a life in the new world. They eventually arrive at the observatory, where Aurora eventually explains why she is there. She has a round-trip ticket, unlike the other passengers aboard the ship. Her plan was to become the first journalist to visit Homestead 2, stay there for a year, and then return to Earth to write the best story ever. Jim finds a means to make Aurora feel better. When she gradually gives up on finding a solution to their current situation, he takes her to the basketball court, to the movie theater, and to dance. Finally, he brings her to meet Arthur at the bar. She unwinds for a while before recalling their predicament. Jim feels terrible about what he did to her and is left by himself with the robot. In one scene, he is seen fiddling with something, and in the next, Aurora enters the observatory and discovers a model of the Chrysler building that he had created for her. They go on a date to the pub a while later. They eat dinner together and tell each other life tales. Her father passed away when she was a teenager, she informs him. Jim leads Aurora to the airlock after the meal, where they put on their spacesuits. Together, embark on a spacewalk. Jim may now finally share that amazing experience with someone. They float together in space after Jim turns off the magnets on their boots. Returning indoors, they kiss right away before retiring to his cabin and sharing a bed. They soon begin to live together as a couple. After relocating to his stateroom, Aurora writes about her experiences aboard the ship. They share meals, sleep, and jog together. Jim discovers the hydroponics bay as he continues to investigate the ship. He brings flowers to Aurora. They visit the observatory to witness a red giant that the ship passes by one day. Later that evening, they celebrate Aurora's birthday at the ship's several restaurants before heading to the bar. While Aurora remains in the bar talking to Arthur, Jim uses the restroom to get ready for the ring he made for her. The robot informs Aurora that Jim purposefully woke her up without realizing he still had to keep that a secret. When Jim unexpectedly returns, Jane confronts him in complete shock. She flees in a fury and rage. When Jim returns to his cottage, everything she owned is gone. The following day, he encounters her in the cantina, but she flees as soon as he speaks. Aurora is in a desperate situation. She wants to kill Jim. So one night she goes over to his cabin and starts kicking and punching him. Jim tries to apologize and explain his behavior to her over the comm since she keeps avoiding him. Aurora doesn't care when he tells her that he fell in love with her. She is unable to forgive him for killing her. Jim is in his cabin one night when another issue occurs. The main command shuts down when the spacecraft encounters a critical error. Later, when he enters the elevator, it breaks down. Jim has planted a tree in the main concourse, which Aurora notices as she enters. The food dispensary at the cantina is also broken when she arrives. Over the communications, they both hear the deck chief's voice inquiring who planted the tree. Gus Mancuso is standing in front of Jim's tree as they both dash into the concourse. They give the chief an introduction and explain the circumstances. How 3 pods could fail is beyond him. When Mancuso brings them to the bridge, he finds that the spacecraft is having problems, but the data on the systems needs to be manually verified. They inform Mancuso that problems had been occurring more regularly across the ship, when a robot nearly falls on their heads as they exit the bridge. As he demonstrates how to gather the data, he says that shouldn't occur. Jim joins Mancuso at the pods to see how they are doing. He has discovered what transpired with Aurora's pod. Jim did something horrible, according to the deck chief. Later, Aurora joins him at the bridge to verify the data that has been gathered. When they discuss what transpired with her pod, he informs her that there is nothing he can do. Jim enters with the 16th malfunctioning robot. Mancuso goes to rest after experiencing hibernation sickness, but he coughs up blood as he leaves. Aurora swims that night since she can't sleep. She begins to drown as the water from the pool moves with her, and the ship abruptly loses gravity. She narrowly survives when the gravity drive resets. On their way to locate Mancuso, they both bump into one another. Back at the bridge, the three of them are gradually learning more about the ship's recent events. Mancuso discovers that a significant system was removed 2 years ago. Since the entire crew is attempting to take up the slack, they must identify and address the cause of the problem. The entire ship will be stuck if they don't fix it. Jim and Aurora take Mancuso to the infirmary when he faints while they are out trying to identify the issue. There are no medicines that can stop his death or extend his remaining time. When the three of them finally meet at the observatory, Mancuso hands Jim his ID bracelet, instructs them to fix the ship, and then instantly passes away. Abruptly, the ship begins to tremble as the lights turn a frightening crimson. They rush toward engineering when Jim tells Aurora that he needs her assistance, but the gravity drive fails again. And right away, Arthur is also affected by another one. Jim turns him off. When they eventually get to engineering, they begin to search for the issue. Aurora is swept in as they open the hatch after discovering it in the power plant. That part of the hull has been breached by the asteroid. Jim is also drawn in, but he manages to hang on to the hatch as it continues to close in on him. He eventually falls in as well. They are able to close the gap in time. Jim immediately discovers that the hull has multiple breaches after resolving that issue. After tracking the meteor's path, the two discover that the meteor struck the reactor control computer. Jim believes he can locate substitute parts for it. They locate the component and replace it, but the reactor venting procedure is still unsuccessful. They try doing it by hand, but it keeps failing. Jim determines that in order to cool the reactor, he must open the vent door from the outside of the spacecraft. They both head to the airlock, and he hands Aurora Mancuso's bracelet as he prepares to leave because he might not return. After assisting him with the suit, she tells him to return as he enters the airlock, since she needs him to survive on the ship. When the temperature reaches a critical levels, Aurora returns to the reactor. As Jim approaches the vent from the outside and notices the door bolt from the reactor shoots into her arm. As he tries to open the vent door by avoiding it, the temperature in the reactor room rises. He informs Aurora that he will have to manually hold the door open in order for the reactor to exhaust. He orders her to vent the reactor even though she objects to the proposal. He reminds her that they must save the others, and she vents the reactor since she doesn't want him to die. Although the procedure is successful, Jim is pushed aside and becomes agitated by the reactor's emissions. His suit's pressure is also decreasing. Aurora quickly gets to another suit and brings him in after he tells her what happened. Once more, he apologizes to her. Her tether is too short, so she dons a costume and takes off to fetch him. After being dragged back, she manages to catch hold of his rope and draw him closer. Jim is already dead when Aurora carries him inside the hospital. She resuscitates Mancuso by circumventing medical procedures and using his bracelet. Jim is brought back to life automatically by the medical pod. Aurora pardons him. Arthur is later fixed by Aurora, and Mancuso is given a dignified space funeral. After escorting her to the infirmary, Jim informs her that he has managed to turn the medical pod into a hibernation pod. He instructs her to board the pod and spend the remainder of the trip there. However, she declines and chooses to remain awake aboard the ship with him, as is later disclosed. After Jim eventually pops the question, they spend the rest of their lives aboard the ship. The Avalon shows up on Homestead 288 years later. When the crew awakens, they discover the ship in a rather surprising condition. In her message, Aurora recounts the events of her and Jim's time aboard the ship, when the others were asleep. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to see more videos like this one. Enable notifications.